can also see what our neighboring agencies, whether or not they do provide any sort of a discount for military or veterans. Then I'm just going to really, the reason that I wanted to share the veterans information with you, we were also asked if we could provide an analysis on potential lost revenue if we were to provide an additional discount for SSDI. And in trying to get some information from the county, it really wasn't readily available for us. And it's also really difficult to know if it will be lost revenue. So I just wanted to share with you that since September of 2018, we've issued 1,334 passes for the veterans and military program. So the potential revenue loss, if you're looking at $200 per person and adult over that period of time, would be approximately $266,800. Now that's no guarantee because we don't know if those memberships, if folks would have purchased memberships if they weren't available to them at the discount. But there isn't really a way for us to provide, I don't believe, an accurate or even a guesstimate of what lost revenue might be when we provide some of these discounts, because there's no guarantee if the folks didn't have the discount that they would pay a full rate. So with that, I'll just cut to the chase. Staff has 3 options for City Council to take a look at when it comes to the Social Security Disability Insurance. 1, no change in the existing PRG scholarship program, up to 25% discount for SSDI. The one thing that I would share with you, you may recall in a previous slide, staff does have the opportunity to exceed that 25 or 50% based on the circumstances for individuals. What happens with that is it's taken to the supervisor and discussed with the division manager. And I'd give you an example of an individual that came to us within this past year who had a terminal illness, and staff actually granted 100% reduction in the fee for the annual pass. So we do have the latitude to do that on a case-by-case basis. The second option would be to change our existing PRG scholarship program in just increasing that 25% discount for SSDI. And the third option certainly could be for council to consider a specific set fee for an annual pass for SSDI. And so with that, I would turn it over to you all for your discussion, questions, comments, and further direction.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate the information. Councilman Wadiola.
Thank you, Mayor. Looking at the ways folks qualify, would adding a free or reduced lunch application help with that?
I actually do believe that that's on there.
Is it? I just looked and I couldn't find it.
Ted, do you know if free?
If it is,
if it isn't, we can certainly look at that. Well, actually, what I guess I would tell you, I believe School District 14 is 100% just because of the high. I'm not sure what 27J is. So I think given that, we look at the circumstances, but then also look at these other pieces.
Okay. Yeah, I would just add it. I'm looking at it right now. It's not on there, but that's another good measure.
And now that I said that out loud, that's wise because it's 100%. Okay. Now, what I would tell you was School District 14, it's a longstanding agreement that if a student is a resident of School District 14 and they do not live in the city boundaries, they are actually considered a resident and receive resident rates.
Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Allen Thomas.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Keith, for the presentation. I'm just curious, do we know how many people are using the PRG scholarships currently?
So in 2021, we've had to date only 1 via the SNAP program, 3 via Medicaid, 1 via SSDI, and 1 that was 100% discount. Now, this is just annual passes. This does not include any of our programs where many families apply for those scholarships. We were just talking specifically about annual passes tonight.
And then on the slide where you mentioned, like, if someone gets WIC, they can get like 50%, and then the other slide, or the same slide, it said 25%. So can they get like together a total of 75%, or is it one or the other?
It's one or the other.
And then last question, how long has the individual adult annual pass has been the $200, and how long has the senior fee been $12?
So what I could share with you is, and I'd have to go back to be very specific, but when the Commerce City Recreation Center opened, it was actually, the senior pass was actually greater than $12. I know that it's been $12 at least since 2002, because that's when I arrived here. It was actually $12 and $25 for non-residents. We increased the non-resident to $150, but we have never been successful in making any changes in that senior pass, even though it's been recommended in the past by our PRG staff as well as the PRG Advisory Committee. I don't recall the last time that we increased the individual senior pass, or excuse me, the individual pass, adult pass at $200.
Okay. So it has been that year, you can recall at least like over 10 years then, since it's been increased?
I'm gonna let Chad answer that. He'll be exact.
Thank you. So the individual annual pass for adults increased to $200 when Bison Ridge Recreation Center opened in 2018. Before that, it was $175, so it increased $25.
Okay. So I was just curious if you thought it with a small increase, since we have put some updates with both rec centers, if you would think would that help with the cost of the renovations we recently did?
What I would tell you is we have the opportunity earlier, DCM Rogers mentioned the user fee and impact fee study that will be done. We'll be looking at all of our fees and charges across the board throughout the city. So it'll be a great time for us to be looking at that. And I believe there's also a public outreach component of that. So we'll have the opportunity to further discuss with our advisory committee and members of the community.
So we don't know when that's scheduled yet then?
The RFP is out, and if I recall, hopefully have those folks on by the end of the year and start that process.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Why do we offer seniors at $12 a year?
I can't fully answer that. I can give you what I believe was shared with me, was that you had a group of seniors that lobbied and helped get funding for the Commerce City Recreation Center that was built, 30 some years ago. And there has always been a commitment, and all I can share with you, Mayor, is when it is brought up, we've never had the support to make any changes or increases in that fee.
I kind of see it, our seniors, they're on a fixed income, and oftentimes, even though you get a cost of living increase out there, that cost of living increase usually doesn't compensate for the increase that you have in, housing expenses, and food expenses and energy expenses and things like that. And I see the benefit of, providing that reduced fee pass to the seniors is an opportunity for them to ensure that they're still able to get out there and be active, despite the fact that, their cost of living, their buying power, for lack of better words, it doesn't go up with their cost of living increase. And so I look at recipients who are on Social Security disability, and there's a lot of people, who are in that 40 to 50 year range who haven't quite reached the point where they're eligible for a senior pass, yet they're on that same fixed income. And their money and their income, their buying power depreciates every year whenever inflation hits record levels like it does recently. And so I just think that, ways that we can help those residents, and there's probably not that many out there that we would be impacting, but ways that we can help those residents in order to ensure that they have access to our recreational amenities despite the fact that they're on that fixed income, despite the fact that they are unfortunately, restricted and their buying power doesn't go the same distance that it once did before. So that's why I propose that we take a look at this. I do appreciate all the information, and I do know the case that you were talking about did get a free pass, and I thank everybody involved in that and making sure that resident was taken care of. But I'd like to make sure that we are, we are supposed to be promoting a healthy and vibrant community, and that's supposed to be one of the cores of the city council, is to promote a healthy environment and to promote a healthy community. And one of the ways we can do that is by ensuring access to our recreational programs. And so, I would like to see us set a set fee for what that recipient on Social Security Disability Insurance would get. I don't think it has to be at the $12 level. I appreciate a 25% discount. That brings it down to $150. That's still a little bit steep for a year for somebody who is trying to stretch that dollar value. So, I'd like to see, somewhere in the range of, $50 for the year for a individual on SSDI as being the fee that is set out there. And that way, we're meeting that council goal of ensuring a healthy community and ensuring access to our facilities. So that's kind of the number that I've set in my mind of what I'd like to see moving forward. Obviously, it is up to the entire council, so I'm going to need some feedback from the other 8 of you on where you would like the Parks and Recreation and golf staff to bring this forward for us for approval. Councilmember Smith?
I'd be supportive of the $50 set fee as well.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I would be in support of that as well.
Councilmember Alan Thomas?
I agree, I'd support that as well.
Any other comments? Councilmember Grimes?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm certainly supportive of a decreased amount. I'm just wondering, what does that do to, I know you can't give us an exact impact financially, but I was kind of thinking more like $10 a month instead of $50 for the year.
And we do have options, monthly options for folks. We have a variety of options.
Any other comments? Okay, if you can put together an ordinance or resolution, however it is that you want it to do, and we can vote on it at a future meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate your time. Next on the agenda is a public hearing. And the true reason for this special meeting, the public hearing is for the Triangle Metropolitan District Service Plan and Intergovernment Agreement. Tonight's public hearing is to consider the service plan and related IGA for the Triangle Metropolitan District. This time I will open the public hearing and invite John Borgelli, Management Analyst, to make the presentation.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Honorable Council members. Tonight we will be discussing the proposed service plan for the Triangle Metropolitan District. Purpose here this evening, first, general overview of the purpose of metropolitan districts, outline the action that Council can take this evening, then finally we'll get into actually reviewing the proposed service plan that's in your packets. High level, just to make sure we're all on the same page, the purpose of a metro district and the service plan of a metro district. Metropolitan districts essentially serve as financing tools available to developers to form quasi-governmental entities that can levy taxes on property within an area against which they can borrow money up front to pay for infrastructure costs. The service plan defines and limits the district's functions, powers, and revenue, and they must comply with TABOR, Colorado Open Records Act, and open meetings laws, as well as Title 32, which is the part of the Colorado revised statutes that specifically governs special districts. District revenue is derived from property taxes as well as fees, subject to the service plan where the mill levies are set out. District debt is not an obligation of the city and does not impact the city's budget. That's an important distinction. These are separate quasi-governmental agencies that have their own taxes and own debt. Commerce City uses a model service plan that has been modified to address applicant requests and other updates, particularly those coming out of the last few months from council. The following are the criteria that must be found in order to approve a service plan. I'll leave that up there for a second. Action that council can take this evening. Council action is affirmative action from council is needed to proceed with the formation of a metro district. City council may approve with conditions, or disapprove of a service plan. And council, per Title 32, must disapprove of a service plan unless the following criteria are met, and that's what was on the previous slide as well. This is just a slightly condensed version. So if any of these four are found to not be met, council must disapprove of the service plan. If all four are met, that's the baseline for approval, but just meeting these does not guarantee approval of the service plan if council has additional concerns or considerations. Now getting into the actual district itself, Vicinity Map, orient you a little bit, 4th Street to the west, East 48th to the south, and Ivy Street going through the district here. So this is in the southern part of the city. A quick overview of the district. This is an application for a new district, approximately 64.8 acres for commercial purposes. The estimated improvement cost per the applicant's financial plan is just over $18 million, with a proposed debt issuance limit of $29.5 million. And that number comes from an explicit formula that's in the model service plan. The maximum combined mill levy would be at 55 mills, and that would be adjustable due to the Gallagherization and rate adjustment to make sure that they can actually discharge the debt at the rate proposed. So that maximum debt mill levy of 40 mills could potentially float a little bit higher due to the Gallagherization. And there is an unlimited debt mill levy if the outstanding debt is at any point less than 50% of the district assessed value at that point in time. There's also a maximum operation and maintenance mill levy of 15 mills. Organizational startup costs are projected at $50,000 with a first-year operating budget of $25,000. And Exhibit E in your packet, the applicant's financial plan, does find sufficient property tax and other revenues in order to discharge the proposed indebtedness at these levels. Some of the basic elements within the service plan. It establishes the general powers, including constructing improvements and remediation of the former landfill site that this will be placed on. That comes in two parts: utility improvements, water, sanitary, sewer, force main and lift station, stormwater line, and detention pond for the site, as well as the remedy improvements for the landfill, the soil cover system, landfill gas extraction system, groundwater monitoring system. It lays out, as we just touched on, the debt issuance limit, and that's from an explicit formula in the model service plan. The mill levy caps. It also does allow for the imposition of fees. Certain reimbursement agreements cannot include compounding interest, and there must be a fairness opinion on the interest rate for these reimbursement agreements. It requires city council approval for modifications, use of eminent domain, and inclusions or exclusions outside of boundaries. So that would have to come back before council before the district could take any of those actions. And it also authorizes the district activities IGA with the city. A few other elements that are in this service plan. The city reserves the right to comment on issue of debt and refinancing. This is not approval. It's just a chance for the city council to provide comment on debt and refinancing. So even if the city were to express a disfavorable opinion, that would not necessarily prohibit the district from still taking that action. It also requires statutory annual notice to be mailed to all property owners within the district by January 31st, an annual report to the city, a recorded statement regarding taxes and debt, and also caps the interest rate and underwriting discount at 12% and 3% respectively. And that was feedback from council from the previous model service plan that has been lowered from, I believe it was previously 18% and 6%. Some limits on authority. It does include requirements of SB 21262. That's the current special district regulation bill going through the state legislature, and future new requirements of the Special District Act, but also restricts application of new powers or authorities granted by future laws. So essentially, once this service plan goes into effect, there are some restrictions on what further regulations can be imposed at that time. If property is sold for a non-taxable use, the district must find that there will be no material impact to its ability to meet its debt service obligations. In other words, if property will be sold for a non-taxable use, the district has to prove that that will not raise or affect the property tax levels of other landowners or prevent it from being able to meet its obligations. Land acquisitions by the district from a developer must be based on independent appraisal, and additionally requires public improvements to be certified by independent professional engineer as to inventory and cost. These are measures to promote transparency and make sure that everything's above board, and prohibits dissolution if there's any outstanding debt or ongoing O&M, so the district must stay in effect until it discharges its obligations. Some governance and transparency measures included in this service plan as well. Specifies additional annual report contents. These are specified within the service plan that you received, and authorizes the city to post this report as well. There's a prohibition on including marketing materials or ads for development or developers within the district's boundaries or on its website. So those are reserved solely for information for the benefit of the property owners. District meetings allow for virtual option. That's to make sure that on important matters, all stakeholders are able to attend the meeting and vote. It also prohibits rules, regulations, or agreements that could diminish or remove the ability of end users, so the property owners, to be appointed or elected to the board. Also, some city oversight measures, and again, this is incorporating feedback from council and best practices. A service plan requires that obtaining written opinion from an external financial advisor. There's an opportunity for administrative review of revenue pledge or reimbursement agreements to another metropolitan district or a developer-controlled entity, and prohibits the formation of authorities or other entities without council approval. So that measure and the one before it are designed to limit the ability to create a finance-controlled district structure in a multi-district setup. Also requires payment of an annual oversight fee if council chooses to impose one at a later date by ordinance. That's something we'll discuss more next month when we talk specifically about Metro District regulations. And establishes more clear terms for material modifications, so helping to make that a little bit more clear when something does have to come before council for amendment, and establishes sanctions as well. Staff has reviewed the service plan before submitting it to council for the public hearing. Based on our review, it does appear to contain the information required by Title 32 and supports the determination that these requirements are met based on the applicant's submissions. If council has any questions for staff and for our review of it, I can answer those. The applicant is also present tonight and can answer any questions or provide any more information as needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Borgelli, for that information. Does anybody on council have any questions for staff at this time? Councilmember Alan Thomas.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for the presentation. I'm just curious, do you know, has there ever been any other metro districts in Colorado on previous landfills?
I do not know off the top of my head if that is something that has ever been done or if there have been metro districts formed that have had to deal with site remediation. That is something that we could look into and get back to you on, though.
Yeah, because I would like to know that, just because my concern is, so how do we know the location is safe?
I believe the applicant does have someone here this evening who can speak to that a little.
Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, John. Mayor and council, I do believe that the applicant will be able to address that question as part of their presentation.
Okay, thank you. Because I just remember previously that EPA report that I requested to be sent to the mayor and city council Was that ever sent out to the mayor and city council about the studies from September of 2020?
I do believe it was sent to you by email and the rest of council as well, ma'am. We can double check that, but that is what my memory serves me.
All right, well, I'll listen to their presentation, because like I said, another concern is just the long-term effects, making sure medically, you know, it'll be safe if industrial and people will be working on that site, since it was a previous landfill, but I'll listen to the presentation. Thank you.
Councilmember Hurst?
Yeah, just to clarify, they're self-imposing they're basically self-imposing a tax on their property to ensure that they can fund this whole project, right? This doesn't affect anybody but the property owner and their leases or anybody that they sell building space to.
That is correct. The tax levy, the mill levy from the district only affects properties owned or leased within the district itself. It is in no way connected to the city. Money doesn't flow through the city, doesn't affect any properties that are located outside of the borders of the Metro District as well. Any eminent domain or inclusions would have to first come to council for approval.
Yeah, and it's my understanding, just to follow up that, the 15 mill levies is going towards mitigating the methane, potential methane hazards on the site. But if you look at the brownfield development in areas in the Northeast, there's entire football stadiums built on top of old landfills, concerts, warehouses. The entire state of New Jersey is basically built on a brownfield on top of a landfill. And so maybe that's a little exaggerated, but I'd say like 60% of it. So I really think that there's a lot to pull from in terms of, you know, proper development and protecting the development that is on top. But I also read that, I got interested from Councilwoman Allen Thomas about that report. And it looks like most of those dangers have been mitigated since the 70s. And then the current practice for the methane mitigation is the current best practice that's out there. And they're actually, their last proposal that we listened to seems like they're taking it even a step further. And so that's why I've been comfortable with this moving forward, is because, you know, it's definitely not something new in development to build on top of a landfill any longer.
Are there any other questions for staff at this time? Seeing none, would like to invite the applicant forward to address the council. While the applicant is making their way forward to address council, I do also want to state that Councilmember Noble needed to leave the meeting, and so therefore is not part of this public hearing.
But mask up or down. Okay. Okay, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of council. My name is Bruce O'Donnell, and I'm a representative tonight of CA Ventures, the developer who has the landfill property under contract for purchase. And I'm joined tonight by Megan Murphy, with an attorney with White Bear Ankley, who will make more of a technical presentation should you wish that. I just wanted to say that we and CA are excited to invest in Commerce City and to play a role in transforming the landfill into a productive use and developing a clean, vibrant, modern warehouse distribution and manufacturing center on the industrial property in the core of your South Industrial Opportunity Zone in your comp plan. And that the Metro District is a needed component of that, and approval of the district service plan this evening will help enable the desired outcome of the development to move forward. And so having said that, consistent with the staff communication recommending approval of the service plan this evening, I ask that council vote to approve the service plan by approving Resolution 2021-81. And Megan will make a brief presentation, and then we're available to answer questions should council have any. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, Megan Murphy, White Bear, Inkley, Tanaka, and Waldron. Can my presentation be up there? It will be soon. It says a lot of what the staff presentation says, but in blue font. So you'll see a lot of the same themes. I'm happy to go through this in more detail, but like I said, it's pretty duplicative, so I think maybe we'll just turn it over to you folks for questions. Yes.
Councilmember Hurst.
Sorry, getting used to this thing again. Would you please mind going over the methane mitigation process to address some of the concerns about the potential safety hazards that are there?
Oh, yes, sir. You just happened to pick the wrong lawyer. So let me lean on Polly Jessen from Kaplan Kirsch.
So I understand we're masks off is okay up here. The landfill currently, right now, has a methane mitigation system in place. And the process for moving forward with development involves an agreement with EPA and approvals from the state of Colorado to modify that system to accommodate the new construction. So the new roadways, the structures themselves, and the changes that will happen with respect to the cover that's currently on the landfill, which is a soil cover. So the other element that will be new along with the development, or along with the changes to this current venting system, will be what are called vapor intrusion mitigation systems in buildings. And these systems are commonly used for various types of mitigation of vapor into buildings. There are slight variations in the designs of those systems, but they're used most commonly for radon, which is a common issue in residential, in particular residential construction in Colorado. So this would be a variation of that kind of system in the buildings themselves, and then along with some modifications to the existing venting system to accommodate the placement of buildings and structures. Did that answer your question, council member?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Councilmember Alan Thomas.
Yes, thank you. So like I had asked previously, do you know, has there ever been any metro districts in Colorado built on landfills?
So there are a number. In fact, it's fairly common to develop over landfills nationwide, as your colleague mentioned. In Colorado in particular, we ask the State Health Department to give us a list after one of our earlier presentations. And a few examples are both industrial and commercial developments. Some examples are the St. Anthony's Hospital Medical Office Building that's out at the Denver Federal Center. There's the Transwest facility on the Pecos landfill. That's right near Pecos and I-70. There's a transfer station here in Commerce City that's a waste management facility constructed on a landfill. There are sports fields on the County Line landfill, recycling center and sports fields on the Rooney Road landfill. There are a number of renewable energy facilities on landfills, a community center on the Aslan landfill in Fort Collins. There's a prison complex at Smith Road that is also on a landfill. And then the River Point Shopping Center you may be familiar with on Sheridan is also constructed on a landfill. So that's not an exhaustive list, but that was sort of first cut at just a list here in Colorado from the State Health Department. And I'm happy to share that email transmittal from the state if it would be helpful to council.
Okay. But we don't officially have any current studies yet on this particular property yet, that it's even safe yet, officially yet, do we?
Oh, this site has actually been extensively studied and is currently closed, is the environmental terminology, but it has received, it's now in what is called the long-term operation and maintenance mode. So the remedy is complete. It's considered safe right now for the uses of the landfill. And when construction happens, the state and EPA retain responsibility over any changes to that existing remedy. And remedy is a little bit of an environmental technical, or a technical environmental term, but it just means the remediation of the landfill is complete. It involves a cap over the landfill materials, this landfill gas collection system. There are certain restrictions on use that help assure that the state and EPA retain jurisdiction if the land use changes, so the changes are protective of the new use. And then there are simple things like there's a fence around it.
Okay.
So that's completed. It's reported on every 5 years to EPA, and all of those reports are available online as part of the administrative record for the site.
Okay. And then in the September 2020, it mentioned the water also. Has the water been tested, and will that, like, say if there's an industrial building, well, do you know, will that be safe? Will it be drinkable, or is it, do we know yet? Has the water been tested?
The water's been tested extensively over the years. This is an industrial area with a number of actually contaminated sites that are under active remediation. This landfill does not appear to be contributing to groundwater contamination. However, the water supply for this site will not be the groundwater under the site. So in these types of circumstances where groundwater is contaminated, it's not, it won't be used for drinking water anyway. And the principal risk is whether those contaminants in groundwater will vaporize into buildings. Here, we don't have that issue, in part because of the remedy for the site, in part because it's been under monitoring since the early to mid 1994, so early to mid 90s.
Because, well, that's just concerning to me. You said it appear, but then also you said it won't be for drinking, but yet if it's going to be an industrial, how will we make sure if it's an industrial site that those, say, eventually people are going to be working there? So how are we going to ensure that they're safe and they're not going to be drinking the water? Because you said it appears, so it's not technically safe then where the water is, and then how would we make sure they're not drinking it?
So as of right now, there is what's called a restrictive covenant on the property that prohibits the drilling of a groundwater well, and it also prohibits the drinking of the water. However, more importantly, the groundwater isn't going to be coming, or the water that's used on the site doesn't come from this area. It's supplied through, I think it's the Adams County and Denver Water supply the drinking water to the site. So the water is coming from the Denver water supplies that are not this site. And these are very shallow aquifers. They're not aquifers that are used for drinking water.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Councilmember Grimes?
Thank you, Mayor. I was just curious about the methane venting system, and well, first, will that be managed by Triangle, or who manages that system, the methane venting?
Methane venting system will be managed by, in practicality, environmental contractors to CA Ventures and ultimately the special district.
And I was just curious if any consideration had been given to methane capture and electric generation.
Yes, actually.
Can you talk a little more about that?
Much of that will depend on the quantity, and this, the methane generation in this landfill has been diminishing over time. And so there's not, you'd have to do some analysis of the feasibility of in other words, is there enough methane to generate energy? However, that's anticipated to be a point of study. It's something that we're expressly negotiating the rights to do, and we're expecting to be something that agreements with EPA will encourage.
Thank you for that feedback.
Councilmember Hurst?
So just to try to clarify some of this environmental stuff, is it a fact that EPA, in conjunction with CDPHE or CDPHE acting for EPA, does have to approve every step of methane mitigation, every step of environmental audits, environmental inspections, all of that, just to get to the point where you guys are at currently to be in the purchasing process? I mean, this landfill would not even be able to be sold for development without all of those checks being in place over the last 20 plus years to get to the point we're at today. If all of that didn't happen by those experts, we wouldn't be here today, correct?
No, that's absolutely right. I mean, technically, anybody could buy it. They just couldn't do anything with it. The existing legal structure through EPA orders, and as I mentioned, the recorded restrictions on the deed to this property don't allow further development without approval.
So you could be like the doctor that owns it today, buy it, sit on it as an investment, stare at it, do whatever is necessary, and then once the market has a need for it, sell it, and then allow that person buying it to go through this process to actually pass all of these tests, if you will, to ensure that it can be developed on safely.
Yes, that's correct.
So I just want to make sure and make it clear that we all know that this is not an easy process to pass. CDPHE and the EPA, they have done intense studying of this site to ensure that development can happen. This happens not only at landfills, it happens at every former gas station facility that had any leakage into the ground soil. I mean, there's a number of different situations where the CDPHE and the EPA have a team of specialists that do just this in terms of what their job function is to make sure that development is happening on these sites, redevelopment on brown sites, as well as other sites that might have had environmental hazards in the past. So you guys have passed all those hurdles, if you will, to get to this point. Am I correct?
We are in the process of obtaining those approvals, but the bottom line is that before ground can be broken for this work to happen, will be through those approvals.
And is it not true that the bank wouldn't even give you a loan to build on that if you didn't have those approvals?
Generally speaking, yes.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I think at the bottom line is when ground breaks on this development, it will have had many layers of approval and review by our health department and EPA to assure that the work that's being done and the proposed uses are safe.
Any other questions for the applicant? I do have one question. It's my understanding that CA Ventures will always be the property owner and that this, the property will not be for sale for the end user.
I'm going to, I believe that that's the case. They do obviously have the power to sell the property because they'll own it.
Okay, but it's the intention for this development project that CA Ventures will own the buildings and will lease the buildings out. And so the Metro District mill levy that is to be paid is actually going to be paid by CA Ventures.
As the property owner, and
As
yes.
the property owner.
I mean, that's a very, as you know, complicated question you just asked, but in general, yes.
Well, it's a germane question, so I would hope to get a straight answer about it.
Yes, that is the intent, as I understand it.
And the representative from CA Ventures, you're,
I mean, Bruce, would you like to speak to this in more detail? This is definitely more of a business person than an environmental attorney's question. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Bruce O'Donnell again. And CA Ventures' business plan is a long-term hold of this property, and they intend to develop and own all the buildings and lease the buildings to tenants. That being said, it may be possible that someday, far into the future, that they would sell a portion of it. But the current plan is a long-term hold, which is usually at least 10 years. And they would be then the single property owner and taxpayer in the district.
thank you. And that
Yes,
is
sir.
unlike what we see in residential metro districts where the homeowner that purchases the home has to pay the metro district mill levy. In this instance, CA Venture, as the property owner, is going to continue to pay the mill levy.
That's correct, yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Any other questions for the applicant? Seeing none, we thank you for your time this evening. Mr. Gibson, is anybody registered to speak on this matter?
Mayor Huseman, one member of the public has registered to speak on this matter. Steve, if you're in the meeting, you can use the raise hand function. Thank you. Steve, you should be able to unmute yourself and provide your testimony. Steve, we're unable to hear you. Give me just 1 second. Try one more thing. Can you try now, Steve?
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Steve. You may begin.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. Thank you for giving the ability to speak on this matter. I know before when it came forward, there were some questions as far as, is this land even suitable to build on? And I know they asked the city to forward some funds to do environmental investigation to see if that was even viable for the landowner to go forward to do any kind of structure on this. So like there's been a lot of work in the process, especially with this landfill gas extraction system and the vapor intrusion mitigation system. I'm sure you guys all read all those things. My concern is this, I know we call it a landfill, but it is a Superfund site. And that seems a little different from just a landfill versus, you know, what it currently is. And I didn't see any report as far as how far down these toxins are, if there's a plume that's been formed, and does it go off the property down below? And then I didn't see, you know, I know this is just as far as the preliminary and all that, but as far as the setback from the parking lot and the building itself, how far back around the perimeter will this system be set up, as far as anyone, you know, working there or around there, as far as any disturbance, if there's anything happened, and is there an evacuation set up for that as well? And also, will the city be reimbursed for what they put forward to see if this land is suitable to build on? That's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Gibson, has anybody submitted any written comments for this matter?
Mayor Huseman, no written comments were submitted by the deadline.
Thank you. At this time, I will close the public hearing. Looking for a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2021-81. Councilmember Hurst.
I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 2021-81.
Councilmember Grimes.
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2021-81. Is there any discussion? I have a few comments. While I greatly appreciate the conversation regarding the environmental impact of this property, the vote that we are taking tonight is not for approval of any development at the property. The vote that we are taking tonight is solely on the establishment of a metropolitan district and an intergovernment agreement, and is not in relation to what is going to be built, what will be built, how it will be built, where it'll be built, or anything else beyond that. I personally do not like metro districts. I would like to see us get away from metro districts. However, in this particular instance, I treat this metro district different from the metro districts we typically see in Commerce City that are residential based. My questions regarding who the end user is and the owner is and who's actually going to be paying that mill levy was germane to my position on the vote. Because CA Ventures, who is going to be the owner of the property, the developer of the property, will be the one ultimately responsible for paying that mill levy, and the property is not being sold to the end user for them to have to pay the mill levy on that. And it'll just be incorporated into their lease, and they'll have to figure out what the proper cost of the lease is per square foot for this property. That causes me to move off my anti-metropolitan district position, so I will support the resolution for them to establish their metro district. Also knowing that the metro district funds are going to be used in order to help with the actual development and with getting some of those environmental protection things that need to be done, as well as a potential URA to make this property developed. This is a good project for Commerce City. It takes a piece of property that is quite honestly not very pleasant to look at right now, that is constantly being inundated with garbage and junk and being a dumping site for people. I think in an area very close to this, we recently had an RV that was on fire that was dumping black smoke into the atmosphere because of the fire. So anything that we can do to improve properties like this, especially whenever they were unusable in the past, is something that does need to be explored. And if this is the mechanism that we're going to be required in order to get it done, and is going to be done so in a manner that doesn't put a burden on the end user, whoever it is, that business that's going to come in, then I can support that. That being said, I do believe that this is going to require a voice vote, so we will do that. All those in favor of approving Resolution 2021-81 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. And the resolution is going to pass unanimously, 8-0. Unfortunately, I don't believe it'll be on consent agenda.
This is your final action on this
Final
metropolitan
action,
district tonight.
And good luck with the formation of your metro district. That is all we have for business tonight. One final announcement. I will be in Minneapolis and Wisconsin tomorrow till Thursday, and then back to visit my mother in the hospital in Texas on Friday through Sunday. In my absence, the Mayor Pro Tem will be designated as mayor should the need arise. Have a good evening. Have a good night. See you next week. Good night, Commerce City.